2:24 time. We spoke to Justin Marshall a couple of hours ago, 81 Test veteran of the All Blacks. Here it is, people talking Six Nations. Justin, well, you're up the other end of the world again, mate. Can tell you it's a swelter down here in New Zealand. Record temperatures, summer, 30 degrees, mate.
Hey, Debs. Yeah, no, I've absolutely heard that. When I left New Zealand, it was, I guess, kind of just going through a little bit of a funny period in terms of the summer. But since then, I've seen that it has been very, very hot, particularly in Auckland and even in my hometown, Queenstown. So I've arrived in London to a balmy 5 degrees, but it has actually risen to 11 today. So things are looking up.
Well, I'm going through my, must-watch sport over the weekend, and top of the table here in New Zealand, 9 a.m. Saturday, France versus Ireland, kicking off the Six Nations. If you want to start loving rugby again, this is a good place to start.
Oh, it certainly is. And when you think that you've got, the two of the best three teams in the world basically going head-to-head in the first round of the Six Nations. Andy Farrell has just been named Lions coach, but still taking the helm for Ireland. And when you think about the dynamics also of it, Marty, you've got Dupont missing for France for the first time in a long time, and equally Johnny Sexton not in the Ireland mix. It's like you've got two of the key instrumental players and key decision-making jerseys that are now not involved. How will either team adapt to that? And for me, it's fascinating that does the dynamic change massively? Like you take a Dan Carter out of the All Blacks mix and all of a sudden it's a different team because those types of players are irreplaceable. But yet the remainder of the team is still the same. So the dynamic is the same. So fascinating game. Is it the decider of the Six Nations? First up, first round, first weekend. It's all set up for Friday night in Paris. Amazing contest.
Yeah, a couple of things about that. Because of the Olympics, of course, Dupont not playing because of that, and also no Stade de France, so different stadiums. So they're going to have to move these matches all around France because of that. And I want to get on to later that, what does it mean that Farrell's out and Dupont's out, and what are players deciding that they'd rather actually earn some money playing clubs or Olympics rather than actually for their national team. But first and foremost, it wasn't that long ago that we were at the Stade de France, and that weekend, quarterfinal weekend, two of the best rugby matches that have ever been played, and these two teams on the losing end of those. You could talk about Australia and their World Cup disappointment, but France and Ireland, those are the two teams that I think walked away from that Rugby World Cup just feeling shattered by it all.
Yeah, they would have, and you make a valid point. And honestly, the Stade de France, how amazing was it? You were there, we caught up, and we saw, what that stadium can bring, particularly to the French, and, the atmosphere, the environment, and the way it lifts them. You take that away from a home team, and then all of a sudden the dynamic changes. You take key players out of the mix as well, and that has an effect. Look, it's a really interesting transition. It always is, Marty. After a Rugby World Cup, we have this massive movement, and we're going to feel that later in the year with the All Blacks, but at the moment, it's not the All Blacks have to think about it. At the moment, it's the Six Nations teams where players that have been so instrumental and so influential in the development of both of their nations or integral in the success of their nations do get old and do move on. And like in Dupont's, I guess in his defence, he's not exactly old or over the tree, but he's wanting a new challenge. So he's moved on. And Johnny Sexton, obviously, he's decided, well, he hasn't decided, but probably thinking to himself that, that was his last Rugby World Cup, as it seems to have been. But you just never know with rugby. I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't surface somewhere. These sort of things do happen. But the game is interesting. And, again, you take it away from a regular venue and you give Ireland a chance. It's just fascinating, the development coming out of a Rugby World Cup, where each team finds its feet again, how they progress, how they try to change the way that they were playing, because it wasn't successful at the World Cup, as you rightly mentioned. Two teams that were supposed to possibly even be in a final didn't end up there. Where they're going to go from now, and how good are they going to be without some key players?
81 Test veteran of the All Blacks, Justin Marshall, special guest on the platform for us every week. Justin, when you've gone to a World Cup and it hasn't worked out, you've got to get back on the horse straight away. You've got to start winning test matches straight away. And it's really important, I believe, for the All Blacks this year, for example, that we stop thinking about the World Cup in 2027 and we get back to what you've been talking about for years, which is win the goddamn next match and then win the goddamn next match after that, because that's what it's built on. How important then for France and Ireland to actually win this tournament?
Look, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I saw Andy Farrell's interviews during the week, and he was basically saying, this is the toughest tournament to win. It's really difficult, and they were sort of trying to label them as favourites, the Irish, but he was trying to play that down. But equally, he was saying, this is really cutthroat, and when you've got teams performing well, to be fair, mate, I was super surprised by the performances of both England and Wales. In France at the World Cup. They were way off the pace in the Six Nations, but when it came to World Cup time, they actually performed really, really well. So when you think about those situations developing, it means that when you've got your big games, like we've got this weekend, obviously, you've got this game between Ireland and France, but, you've got England trying to front themselves again without Owen Farrell, without Marcus Smith, and all of a sudden they've got no 10 or a new 10 coming in. But they had a good Rugby World Cup out of the blue, where they got beaten by Fiji before the Rugby World Cup. It's just really strange to try and think, right, well, how does all of this piece together and how does it work? And how do you decide who's the favourites and who are not? And how significant is this game? Because you could be England or Ireland or France and win this game, but yet there's still a team that could tip you up out of nowhere because the other teams seem to be capable. So, yeah, it's fascinating to me how this is going to play out. Like you said, for the All Blacks, we don't have to deal with that until later in the year, but these teams are facing it so quickly after the Rugby World Cup that they have to just get out there and see where they're at. And what makes it really interesting is the dynamic, again, of players missing, players that are basically players of the decade in the UK or in Europe that are not there anymore, and it just adds a little bit of spice to the mix.
Justin, you're one of the lucky few that get to experience the different atmospheres. The Six Nations is different from a World Cup; it's totally different again. You're talking about age-old rivalries that go back centuries, go back to kings and queens and castles and invasions and bloodlines, and people get bitter and twisted about this even now, which is why, a team like, Ireland or England or France, who you think there's no way they're going to lose to Wales, well, they could bloody lose to Wales because the Welsh players, this is the most important thing for them. So let's look at that Wales-Scotland game for a start. Now, both of us put some raps on Scotland before the World Cup, and they just got landed in the worst possible group, didn't they? Where maybe the easiest opponent was Tonga, and that's not an easy game. So that, to me, is a really difficult one to pick as well, because, as you say, the Welsh actually showed something at that World Cup, but Scotland, perhaps we were expecting more of them. So I'm actually as fascinated about that fixture.
Yeah, so am I. And actually, that's the game I'm going to at the weekend, and I'm really looking forward to it on Saturday. I was talking to old Big Jim Hamilton.
Great dude, mate.
Scottish lock, and did a lot. He's a good man, isn't he? Did a lot of his time in New Zealand as well. And he sent me a message today, and I said, I'm going to be there. And he said, I'm going to be there as well. And he said, yeah, no problem. You'll be supporting the Scottish because everyone in New Zealand is Scottish, aren't they? I was like, yeah, well, to a degree, I guess they are. But, there's a few of us that also have some Welsh roots that we like to keep close to ourselves as well. So you think about that game, and the interesting thing about that, Marty, to me, is the fact that Gregor Townsend has given Finn Russell the armband to captain the side. When you think about 2 years or 3 years when they had this massive, I guess, controversy where the two of them couldn't get on as player and as coach, and all of a sudden now Finn Russell is going to captain the Scottish side. You've got this Welsh team that under Warren Gatland overperformed at the Rugby World Cup, who were in all sorts of trouble. And then equally, when you think about it, they also now have him at the helm, and he's no stranger to knowing what it's like and what's required to win a Six Nations. It's a belter of a game to a degree. You've got that massive game in France, but the one down in Cardiff is equally as important, I think, to see how teams that are potentially able to really challenge those superpower teams at the moment, like France and like England and like Ireland, and say, you know what, we're not here just to mess around. We're here to try and win this tournament as well. So it's a big start for Wales and Scotland in that first one down in Cardiff. And I think it's going to be really, really enjoyable, and it's going to be interesting to see who comes out on top.
Just in terms of the atmosphere and that, just to anyone who hasn't been to these games, you're going to walk into, I call it Cardiff Arms. I know it's the Millennium Stadium. I go back where it's Cardiff Arms, mate. But just let people know, Justin, how special it is. Look, if it, to me, it's close as a comparison, I suppose, to English football. It's that kind of atmosphere, that red hot.
Yeah, it is. And, I was very lucky that I got the opportunity to play there. I just missed out in playing at the Cardiff Arms. They were renovating and producing the Millennium Stadium at the time. So when I came over in 1997, fond memories, because I was
played at
very
Wembley
lucky
that day,
to captain the All Blacks.
That's it, yeah.
Captain at the All Blacks at Wembley. And we played at Wembley in London simply because Millennium Stadium was being built. But then I actually managed to survive long enough, Marty, to go and play at the stadium, and had this at the time was innovative. It was the state-of-the-art complex. It had a roof, and to go along there, and when you enclose a stadium with Welsh passion, particularly when they're playing against the All Blacks, standing out there in that field as an All Black and listening to your national anthem that comes out first, and being, as you are, always proud. But then hearing that Welsh anthem crank up, and you can't literally do anything but get goosebumps, because, it's not your own national anthem, but you can feel the passion, and it just actually bloody cuts through you. Like, it's like, wow, these guys are here and they are serious. And I think, to a degree, it sharpens you. It sharpens you to, they're going to give you everything they've got. And we don't understand, I think, the passion and the rivalry of Six Nations rugby, and we don't really compare. Like, at the end of the day, we've got our rivalry against South Africa and Australia and all that, and we've got massive history. But this dates beyond rugby. This dates back to history in a different sense, and I certainly felt that when I first ever played for the Ospreys in Wales, and I'd never experienced it before. We went into the Anglo-Saxon Cup and we played an English team for the first time, and it was Leicester. And honestly, my Welsh teammates in the changing room, they were on a different planet to where they'd ever been psychologically, that I'd ever experienced when we'd just been playing in our normal Celtic league. It was, look, I loathe to say the word hatred, but there was this absolute mindset of, what they've done to us before, we're going to put it right today type thing.
Exactly, yeah.
They were so intense. It was just something I've never seen before in a changing room. That I don't think we really understand, and that's what the Six Nations brings.
I'll leave you with this thought. We had Beauden Barrett on the program yesterday from Japan. He injured his knee on the weekend. He's out for about 4 or 5 weeks or whatever, but he very clearly, very definitively said he wants the number 10 jersey back for the All Blacks.
Yep, and when we spoke last week, I said don't discount Beauden Barrett. He's re-signed. He's re-signed for a reason. Obviously a new coach and new ideas and new philosophy. But I think when you've got world-class players who have been World Rugby Players of the Year and have been to the coalface and back, who say that they want to be involved, they want to be a part of it, and don't count me out, straight away that sends a message to anybody that's thinking they're going to step into that jersey. And I think that's great for New Zealand rugby. I think it's great for the individual. I think Beauden saying that is showing that he's keen, he's motivated, and that we're in a good place in that jersey, because if anybody is slightly off, they're not going to take it off him. So I'm really pleased to hear that. I didn't hear the interview, mate, but I'm so pleased that he's saying, you know what, I'm not done yet. And equally, if someone's going to take this jersey off me and bench me, or even worse, they're going to have to be very, very good at what they do. And that's got to be good for us and good for the game.